Welcome to Evolve Together with Empower People, where people are power. I'm Tiffany Joy Greene, MBA. Here, clarity cuts, humor heals, and purpose drives transformation. Join the movement at www.empowerpeople.org and connect with us on YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook, because when people are power, purpose wins. Welcome to a special after-election edition of Evolve Together with Empower People. I'm Tiffany Joy Greene, and this week the headlines are loud, the votes are counted, and the energy across the country, electric and uneasy, all at once, because the ballots might be sealed, but the story isn't over. This is the moment after the noise, when we ask, what now? What next? What's mine to do? Today we're doing something different. We'll begin with These Are the Days of Our Story with Charles Louthan. He'll remind us what this week in American history has looked like across generations. Then I'll take us into the headlines, shaping this chapter. What's happening right now, seen through a purpose-driven lens. After that, we'll pour a cup of joe and sit down for our coffee Klatch Roundtable, where we'll unpack what these stories mean for us, our communities, and our collective conscience. And finally, we'll close with something practical. What can you do moving forward? Because understanding is just the appetizer. Action is the meal. This is not politics. This is people in motion. Let's begin.
Hey everybody, Charles Louthan here, and today I'm going to be going over some of the headlines of Ourstory, notable news and headlines from the past that influence us in today's society. Specifically, we're going to be kind of focusing on some elections here. So on the first one, November 3rd, 1948, President Dewey was declared the victor over Truman. Now, you may not remember this from your history books, because actually the day before, November 2nd, 1948, Truman had defeated Dewey. But the Chicago Tribune, wanting to get a jump on it, declared Dewey the winner. There's a famous photograph out there, you might have seen it before, but also in another famous election on November 3rd, 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson defeated Barry Goldwater in one of the most lopsided presidential elections ever. Now, many reasons for this, but one of them might have been that also on that same day, November 3rd, 1964, Washington, D.C. was allowed to vote in a presidential election for the first time since the year 1800. And then finally on November 3rd, 1998, some of y'all might remember this, but Jesse the Body Ventura was elected governor of Minnesota. Now on the next day, November 4th, 2008, many of us probably remember this, Barack Obama was elected the first black president of the United States of America. And then the next day, November 5th, 1872, the first woman in America, Susan B. Anthony, goes and casts her first vote, 48 years before the 19th Amendment, and got in trouble. Might want to look up the story on that one. Pretty fascinating. And then finally, in a little bit of side news, as it is football season here, on November 6th, 1869, in the very first football game, Rutgers defeated Princeton in a score of 6-4. Now, if you know scoring in football, I'm going to challenge you how to figure that one out. So let's hear about some of the headlines here coming in today from Tiffany Joy Greene. Take us over.
Democrats took major wins in New York City, Virginia, and New Jersey, electing Zohran Mamdani, Abigail Spanberger, and Mikey Sherrill. Each victory sent a message louder than campaign ads. People voted for pragmatism over performance, for empathy over ego. Purpose lens, leadership isn't just a title you win, it's trust you earn. These elections weren't about parties, they were about priorities. Affordability, integrity, and dignity. This is what happens when citizens choose progress over polarization. It's a reminder, power doesn't live in Washington, it lives in the willingness to show up. Elections don't change people, people change elections. While ballots were being counted, the federal shutdown entered its harshest phase. 42 million Americans are at risk of losing food assistance, and tens of thousands of Head Start classrooms closed this week. Purpose lens: hunger is not an economic condition, it's a moral one. The same government that funds global defense is telling families, we can't feed your kids right now. We don't have a budget problem, we have a values problem. Every closed classroom and empty pantry is a headline about misplaced priorities. A nation that can't fund its future is eating its integrity for breakfast. This week, ICE found itself in court again. A federal judge in Chicago heard testimony about ICE agents deploying tear gas and projectiles against protesters, clergy, and reporters. Citizens in fur costumes and clergy collars are now witnesses in a case about government accountability. Purpose lens: force without oversight isn't enforcement, it's intimidation. When law enforcement acts above the law, public trust collapses. This isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. Power that doesn't protect the people eventually polices itself, and history is the jury. California voters just passed Proposition 50, reshaping how congressional lines are drawn. It's more than a map update, it's a moral compass check. Purpose lens: representation begins with fairness. You can't preach democracy if you're practicing manipulation. This win means more competitive districts, more balanced voices, and more accountability. Proof that democracy can course correct when citizens pay attention. When people redraw the lines, power remembers who holds the pencil. Forget cable news. TikTok's latest viral obsession is the bees in a trap. What's up mashup trend? Celebrities from Jennifer Lopez to Gordon Ramsay are lip-syncing, dancing, and laughing. The internet's joyful revolt against gloom. Purpose lens: in heavy times, humor is a form of hope. When people can laugh, dance, and connect across politics and borders, it's proof that creativity is still our common ground. The same energy that drives memes drives a movement, because both start with one voice choosing to be heard. Joy is resistance dressed in rhythm.
Our story and today's headlines relate. Was there anything that stood out to you?
I would say, from my perspective, the thing that stands out most is when you were going through the historical headlines, I'll say, there was a lot of activism. I heard a lot of fighting, a lot of change, some misinformation. So as the old cliche goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yep.
But then also at the same time, what also stands out to me is the fact that before any great leaps and positive social impact happens, pain must be felt. So some of those, like when you look at the Susan B. Anthony headline you shared about her being arrested after trying to place her vote, right? But then we weren't able to vote. How many years after? 48, you said? 48 years
48.
later?
I was going to put it in there as a trivia question, but...
And that wasn't even for all women. That was only for white women, but still 48 years later. And I could even though it was legal for white women, a lot of white women didn't really have freedom to choose either, because they were still property based on their husband, so they're just casting an extra ballot for their husband. But anyway, I digress. That progress doesn't always happen swiftly and mightily, but it does happen. So not to lose hope.
Well, and I think it's interesting because that's one of the things that stood out to me was with the ICE under scrutiny, with the questioning of the force, of the shutdown fallout. I mean, what are the headlines going to look like for 10 years for today? We don't always know what's going to stick around in the news and what isn't, but I think that, especially as we've seen some of the things in the news over this last year, it can be a bit shocking. And I mean, if you were to pull any of these and say, hey, in 10 years, I think that one might be that, looking at questioning that use of force. I mean, what is appropriate, is there an appropriate use of force?
I was so I mean, just to kind of piggyback on that first, I think it's a bit much when I see videos such as one I saw earlier this week where ICE took down a father and a son who had just stopped into, my presumption was it was just a home improvement store. So it was early in the morning. The kid was 16. He was just on his way to school. So I'm guessing he just kind of popped in there with his dad. ICE took him and his dad down. The kid was telling the agents that, hey, I'm only 16. I was just trying to go to school. And they were using such excessive force on him. He wasn't fighting back. He wasn't anything. All I saw was him pleading with these people to, to kind of go easy on him. And I mean, I guess it would be one thing, if you were in fact in fear for your life as a law enforcement officer. I know that, they have a really difficult job to do, but a 16-year-old and his dad, I mean, his dad is, trying to be as compliant as possible. But you have a kid who's scared, they eventually let him go. But I think that's a bit much.
Well, and I think one of the things for ICE and things of that nature is proving that you're a citizen. We hear a lot about kind of what is the proof, and they're not giving the opportunity to prove that they're a citizen, but also I've seen a lot of questionable individuals that have been acting as ICE. They'll have, I mean, it looks literally like it's cosplay. And I mean that in the scariest way possible. I don't mean that in the fun, like, hey, let's go to a Comic-Con. I mean that in terms of like these boys running around and acting like G.I. Joe and giving a license to do that. I think in some ways I would maybe say almost prefer to see the National Guard because they are long-standing, whereas with ICE being this sort of executive branch, correct me, institution, I don't know how long they've been going around. I don't know what their powers actually are.
I don't think anybody knows what their powers actually are. And I think that's part of the appeal to them, because they're kind of acting as vigilantes. Oh, we're going to cleanse this nation of these miscreants. Well, who are the miscreants? And what constitutes, I mean, if someone is in a store clearly buying things for a project, they're not, this argument that people keep making that, sorry about that. This argument that people keep making that, oh, well, the administration's trying to get rid of the drug dealers and I don't know what I can say on here. I'm so accustomed to being on these other platforms.
You're free.
So So rapists and all these other bad actors, right? So if that's your goal, how are you determining who to go after? Because there have been numerous instances where they're just scooping everybody up because you look a particular way. There's no rhyme or reason for why they're doing anything other than, hey, we'll just scoop everybody up and then kind of sort through them after the fact. But I mean, now you've already traumatized people. You know how traumatizing that is? If I saw someone take my mother, my father down, and I can't do anything to help them. And then if I were a teenager and then feeling helpless and, scared for my own safety, but also scared for the safety of my parents who I might never see again. I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
You remind me of an experience that I had when I was teaching. In 2010, I had a 10th grader whose parents were they were deported. And she was old enough to not be deported with them. I'm not really sure what exactly happened, but she dropped out of school. And I heard that she had been taken in by her family, which was not her biological family, and did not really sound like a good thing from the friend that I heard this from. I don't want to say necessarily what that was, but it was a scary situation for her. She had to drop out of school. She had to do all of these things. And, that was 2010. That was 15 years ago. And who knows like what kind of trauma that is for her to just walk around and experience that on a day to day. And I think it's one of the saddest things is since that moment until right now, I have never heard a policy that says, hey, why don't we just do a mass legalization? Everybody that's here, why don't we just all come together? I mean, I can tell you how my historical relatives came over here. But even then, as a white person and the records that go in, we can only ever go so far back. And when you start to peel back some of the layers of what actually happened in the history with it, it's almost like we continually take groups of people and villainize them because of whatever else is going on in the background of those people. It feels like this distraction, this kind of, it's their pride, it's them, and you never hear any accountability. And like barely ever any accountability. It's always this strong, like alpha male, look at this. And I see that same thing now with ICE. It's not like, hey, all right, okay, cool. I understand. Like you're a little bit scared. Okay, well, this is the process. I mean, I've seen some shows, Cops, particularly. You might remember that show, a little callback there. And there were some crazy things. There was definitely like abuse by police officers, but generally speaking, my interaction with police officers has been very professional. And I haven't even seen an ounce of that with the federal police, I guess. Is that what, ICE? I don't know. I just, to me, that the use of force, like just because somebody is here illegally or legally, depending on changing standards and things of that nature and what turns this person and how do they do it, how does that person get to determine to use force on somebody on American soil? But I will say this. I think that we made a really strong message to a lot of that here in this last election. I mean, literally threats from the president in a mayoral race in New York. Like, I mean, just think about that. I keep messing up his name, so feel free to correct me. Mamdani, right? Running for mayor of New York. And look, New York is definitely like, it's the Big Apple. But the president of the United States feels so threatened. He feels fear. He's scared of a mayor candidate. I mean, I can't think of anything that's less alpha male, to be honest. Which, by the way, did you know that alpha male is not scientifically accurate for humans?
No.
I did not know that.
It was based off of a study in like the 1970s where they were looking at like wolves and wolf society, and it was like a very heavily biased, go figure, white male study that was doing some, I don't remember all the specifics, but essentially came up with this term of alpha male, and it's not even true in dog hierarchy. It's actually more like alpha, beta, theta, delta, and like they all have roles. You don't have one like big strong one, and it's now morphed into this thing where it's like, oh, we an alpha male.
Yet, however, women have the typically get labeled with the female equivalent of a dog's name. But I digress.
And you know, hey, I want to say one thing I'd like to point out. I think it's really cool that within my lifetime, I've gotten to see the first Black president, and I've also got to see the first female governor of Virginia. And, you know, I think it's easy to be defeatist about some of these things, but it's also important to celebrate those. The bees in the trap.
Way to bring it back. Way to bring it back. So you said a lot, Charles, so I'm going to put Tammy on the spot. Was there anything you had that came to mind as Charles was talking?
A lot of things came to mind as Charles was talking. Now, the challenge becomes trying to address those things in as succinct a manner as possible. First off, I was kind of thinking about what you said with regard to your interaction with the police. Your interaction with the police is completely different than the interaction that someone of color would receive on most occasions. And I will say that because
but I'll also say they were mostly car accidents.
Okay.
So different situations. But yes, I agree with you.
Well, but I mean, we see and we've seen in times past where a simple traffic stop resulted in the deaths of people. And how do you explain, how do you explain the escalation from a simple traffic stop to somebody now resulting in someone's dying? You know what I mean? So there's always this fear for me when I'm stopped that I innately, I'm afraid when a police officer stops me. I try to live my life as a law-abiding citizen. I am very much rules. Rules for me provide structure and provide boundaries. My dad was ex-military, so he had expectations that you do it this way, dress right, dress kind of thing. And this is the way I want it done. This is, yes, sir, no, sir. We did all of those things, right? The problem that I have is that I've had encounters with police officers who don't seem to care that I am a law-abiding citizen. And I have actually been profiled, so I know what that is. I've actually had people, using, racial slurs against me, and I've never said anything to you. So the fact that you receive a certain level of treatment and it's a professional thing for you is great. And I'm glad that nothing has ever transpired to make you feel fearful. But there is definitely a difference in the way you are treated versus the way I would be treated versus the way that even my father or my nephews might be treated as young Black men. My eldest nephew is a lawyer, but if he gets stopped by the police, they see Black man first. They are not asking for his level of education. They're not asking if he knows the law. They're not asking anything. They just see threat. And I don't understand why that is, but that is kind of the way that is.
I think I have a better example for you. You said you're military. So when you pull up to a military fort going into the gate, they have a process of talking with the people. That's what I'm trying to say. that
Yeah.
like when a police officer, they have like, you have to read their Miranda rights. There's some sort of an existence there, but I don't know of any process. And that's what I'm,
Mhm.
you know, and look, I totally understand that. And it's, you know, I've had fear for my own reasons, but not to that degree for police, you know, and that's something
Mhm.
that is important to recognize. And like you said, there's been deaths that have resulted from that. And I think in terms of like, why do none of us know what the process is for this executive force?
Because there is no process.
Right.
Let's
And
be
I think
clear,
it was
there's
that
no
by design.
process. There is no process.
Hey, to our Canadian viewers.
And I think
So,
that's kind of where I was going with the
yeah.
National Guard as well, where I actually feel a little bit safer because they have a process for dealing with things like that. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be better, specifically when you're bringing other states' National Guards into other states, which is a whole different account.
What I'm hearing you say, Charles, is that your thought would be that a process would keep people a bit safer, even if there was still an abuse of power. At least there would be some semblance of some sort of control if there were a process, even if people abused it.
Yeah, and something that we can at least talk about, because I mean, questioning just the use of force is crazy.
So, yeah, but the process is to use any means any means at all, right, to detain. So, like a video I saw was a woman was driving to work in Chicago, minding her own business, following the rules of the road, and ICE ran into her vehicle on purpose, grabbed her out of the vehicle, arrested her, put her in an unmarked car, and drove off with her, leaving her smashed vehicle on the road.
And we're assuming that that was ICE.
It was ICE. It was, and this is, yes, because the reporters did their job and due diligence. So the question, but they have any means necessary. And again, on Sunday, if you listened or watched the news, the president of the United States was asked in the 60 Minutes interview about all of the things that ICE is specifically doing and all the detaining and all this. And the question was, there's been a lot of criticism. There's a lot of people saying that too much is happening, that there is no checks and balances. And what, again, I'm paraphrasing, this wasn't their exact words, but what is your response to that? Do you know what his response to that was? We're not doing enough. We need to up it.
And here's the other thing, and I don't even know if this is okay. So this is just me theorizing, right? So let's just say, for instance, ICE is doing all of these things and there's no clear oversight. You know, Charles, to your point, hey, it would be better if, you know, we had the National Guard in, because at least the National Guard, we know, blah, blah, blah. But there are rules in place that say that the United States, the military is never supposed to be used against its own people, right?
Yep.
And so anytime you call in the National Guard, it's generally in an instance where there's like tremendous chaos and all this other stuff. They sent the National Guard, if I'm not mistaken, was it Portland, Seattle? Gosh, where was it?
Portland.
I think Portland. There was nothing happening. So you manufacture this fear, you manufacture this terror, you know, using this entity now that has very little oversight, right? And then the
Yeah.
argument can be made, like you just said, well, it would be better if we brought the National Guard in. And now it's become like a military state. And now the norm is, oh, I'm so glad we have the National Guard here, or this other military faction here. And then, so little by little, all of our civil liberties and stuff are slipping away right in front of us because, well, I'd rather have them than ICE. But then you're still fulfilling the desires of the people at the top who wanted to bring the military in the first place. And I don't know, maybe that's just me,
No,
using
Charles.
my creative mind to fill in some blanks or something. But I think that's awfully, it's usually during times of chaos and fear and stuff that people are so willing to give up their civil liberties and stuff in the name of staying safe. It's like, what are you staying safe from? There is no there. There are no people, when people have been protesting and stuff. You talked about it in the last episode of this podcast, Tiffany, where people were dressed up like cartoon characters and things, and that was the extent of everything. But you watch the news reporting, the news clips, everybody's like, oh, Antifa is coming, and be aware and stuff. And it was so far removed from that the news reporters in these particular stations never even apologized for mischaracterizing what happened. They then went to the other extent and said, well, how stupid was that to have people dressed up like animals and stuff? What was that about? Not, oh, we got it completely wrong. There was none of the stuff that we predicted would happen. It was peaceful.
And
So to
yet,
me, it just seems like people are trying to manufacture fear.
I still pepper sprayed the furries. But the furries remain strong, and they continue to stand there.
But you see what I'm saying? And I don't know.
No,
I
I
don't know
wanted
much
to go
about
back. Well, I wanted to go back to Charles because it looked like he wanted to
yeah.
say something. Charles, what did you want to
I
say?
mean, I don't. First of all, I'd like to be on the record with saying that, again, I disagree with ICE as an American citizen. This is not what I voted for. I believe it's illegal. It seems fairly illegal. And we should have a process for allowing these people to become legal and celebrating the fact that they can become citizens of this country, because we can't become citizens of all countries. America is, look, we are definitely flawed, but there are countries out there where none of us would be able to become a citizen of that country at all. There's not a process, period. Here, there is a process, and what I'm trying to figure out is, when did we get off of that? When did we, oh, well, you came here illegally, and we're just going to now kick you out, instead of, like, why don't we bring people into the fold? Why do we have to attack them constantly? And
It was Ronald Reagan who actually allowed undocumented folks to stay here. It was in the 80s with Ronald Reagan who opened the borders. And why is because our economy depended on it.
And there's just so much personal fear within so many people. And I think I still believe this, and I believe it even more now. What we're seeing politically is the result of generational trauma through American society and through these things. And the only way we can break out of it is through an individual realization of ourselves and what our purpose is and how to utilize that to make the world a better place. And if you can't get to that point, then you're living a life in fear, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to take it out on other people. And it's just, I see this with the individuals using ICE as an excuse to take out these unresolved feelings. The shutdown fallout. Even one of the questions I wanted to ask is, how is ICE getting paid? Are they doing this for free? So they're getting paid while the government is shut down, while our Americans are struggling to travel. Right?
They're getting paid per detainee, so they're incentivized.
So it's a bounty.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll call it what it is. But here's the thing: why doesn't the media do that? And why do we just listen to the media and allow them to control all of that narrative? And I don't say we. I don't think any of us necessarily do. We have been working on ourselves to look through that process. But you talk to. I will say this. I think that, again, the most recent election shows a shift in that mentality.
I'm just hoping it's not too little too late. The other observation I wanted to make with regard to the headlines that you provided was that it seems in every instance, in every headline, it's always it's almost like this bully mentality. They're whoever the they is in the story, they are attacking the disenfranchised and people in you know, whether it be for socioeconomic reasons or race or whatever it is, it's always this much more powerful entity making it difficult for people who are just trying to get along.
Was there one in general that like jumped out to you?
Like I think all of them jumped out to me, but I mean, you were talking about the shutdown and SNAP benefits and stuff. Most of the people, that's like a hugely, a largely like a socioeconomic issue. You know, a lot of people
Talking
rely
about
on Head Start.
the modern headlines or the historical ones?
The current headlines. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay. No, you're good.
Yeah, the shutdown, SNAP benefits hit, Head Start closures, the
Yep.
number of people who've been affected by the SNAP benefits being halted. There was actually an article here in Atlanta where the mayor of Atlanta put I don't know if you would call it a moratorium or something on people being evicted from their homes during the because as a result of the SNAP benefits and things being stopped. So that's supposed to be to last through, I think, January 31st of 2026, because it is such a huge problem for people. But it just seems like in all of these things, it's always because in the headline with ICE has the power to just ram people's vehicles and drag them out of the car. And then the expectation is if someone is not going to try and fight back, because I don't know, that would be my natural instinct. I don't know about anybody else, but then you get in trouble for resisting arrest. And then, like, you're not even showing me your face. I don't see a badge number. I don't see anything. I just see a big vehicle ramming mine, and there's nothing I can do.
Well, I also feel like there is a correlation with ICE and how ICE is detaining people, and people are being taken and people don't know where people are. Like they're like missing.
Mhm.
Like families are looking for like, where are they? And they're not getting answers. And how odd it is, and the correlation between that and how people predominantly, not all, but predominantly women, are getting abducted and human trafficked in unmarked vehicles, and has been going on for a very, very long time.
Well, and I think that well,
I wasn't done. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And so where is the outcry? Where was the outcry for that? So it's like when all these things in our history keep happening and we're passive and we're complacent, the things don't just miraculously absolve themselves and stop happening. Just more happens in more and more ways. The question is, for the people, what people matter to you? If it's not the girls and the women who are abducted, if it's not people of color who are losing their lives on our own screens that we're seeing visibly with our own two eyes, if it's not the people who are in our country, whether immigrants or seeking asylum or safety being abducted, and do people who are not going to be able to feed themselves or their families So do those people like so I feel like when we're watching the news and we're looking at the headlines and we look at history, I think it's really clear that if you were to, what is our value? What do we value? And can we make the comment or the argument that do we value all people in this country? Do the actions say that we value all people? Do we actually see all people even as people?
I'd say no. And I'd also say, Charles, you'd probably be able to give a lot more detail on this, but I know that just from documentaries and things that I've read and heard about how Hitler came to be in power, he didn't take over the government. He was voted into office. He was voted into office, and but then they would use this rhetoric and stuff that would dehumanize people, refer and reference to people as vermin and these other things. And I see the same things happening now. And that is what is so alarming to me. And I have never, ever made the pronouncement that I was the smartest person on the face of the earth. And by that measure, I'm like, there are so many intelligent people. There's no way that I can see this happening and you all can't see it. Um, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why things are being allowed to transpire the way they are. I don't know why this system of checks and balances that we have, that the forefathers put into place to avoid scenarios such as this one. I don't understand why now all of a sudden we're just gonna, completely dismiss these fail safes. We're going to completely dismiss those, dispense with those. They don't even matter anymore. We'll just do our own thing. Why even have a constitution if you're not planning to abide by it? And then, there's a set of rules for these people, and then there's a set of rules for these people. I thought the rules are supposed to be the rules, and we follow them. And if we don't, no one was supposed to be above the law, at least as I understood it. But you're showing, we're seeing every single day in the news that no, that's not true. There are some people who are above the law, and they can just proceed with reckless abandon. Doesn't matter who they hurt, doesn't matter what processes they cause to implode. Yeah, just do whatever. As I'm still trying to understand how long does it take to construct a gallows? Does anybody know? I would think that you would probably hear some construction noise, some sawing. I'm imagining there has to be some hammering, and visually you can see the construction of a gallows. How is it that people at this seemingly nonviolent protest, the J6 protest, how that was not seen as a threat? But again, I
That was
digress.
wild. That was wild. That was like, for me, uh, there's certain like historical events that happen in your life that you're just, like the generation, I think I'm going to say the generation before me. I'm not going to say us just to be safe, but the generation before me all remembers where they were when John F. Kennedy got assassinated, right? It's like the day the country stopped and stood still. Well, I think it's safe to say for all of us here, there's been like those moments in time, and January 6th for me is one of them. I will never forget it. I will never forget looking. I was working way, and then something came up on my computer, like a headline or something. I was like, what? And I went out to the family room and I turned on my television and I saw the news and I saw what this insurrection happening. And I was like, it felt like,
The
I
opening
remember
credits of The Handmaid's Tale.
well, what it did for me, well, I get where, yes, but I think for me what it was is like, so when 9/11 happened, I remember seeing that on the television and I'm like, no, this isn't a movie. It feels like wait, this isn't a movie. And that's how I felt on January 6th. Like I felt like but I'm like, no, this is not a movie. It was like so it's a defining moment, not just as it's a defining moment for us as individuals when you live through these historical moments, but it's also defining moments in our history. And so it begs the question, how are we wanting to define ourselves? It feels like, when you they might not do this anymore in gym or PE class, but I think all of us probably experienced, playing games in gym or PE class, and you had to pick teams for whatever game you're playing. We'll go with dodgeball, and the teacher had to plead with the leaders of the teams to pick certain kids, right? I was one of the kids that nobody wanted me. The asthmatic wheezing in the corner. I don't want her. And it's like, and I can say as a kid, and as I'm laughing, it felt horrible. It felt absolutely horrible. And what are we witnessing right now? That on a much more massive scale. Much even deeper repercussions. And it's hard, I think, what I struggle with is we've all been the asthmatic kid who doesn't want to get picked for the team. It may not be in that scenario, but it's in another scenario. We've all been there. Everybody's had that situation, not getting invited to the certain table in the lunchroom, or not being invited to the party, or all kinds of things, right? And none of us like that. We all know what it feels like to not be wanted, to not be included, to be dismissed, to be othered. And so how do we see all these people being othered and dismissed and mistreated and bullied, and not on some level feel for them? Because the circumstances may be different, but we've all been in those shoes at some point or another in some way. That's what I don't understand. And for as much as I'm laughing about being the asthmatic wheezy kid, it was a horrible feeling. I wouldn't want anybody to feel like that. I don't want people to feel like that. I don't know what Charles is writing, but he's writing something.
He's writing feverishly. That's why I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to interrupt his thought.
He's actually writing in cursive.
Ancient writings. What is this you speak of, this cursive? The young generations will not be able to read it.
I think that my blind spots are through my own experience, right? Where it's like, again, the reason why I think that this is a reflection of the traumatic generational trauma and stuff in America is because of my own trauma. I think one of the reasons why I believe, and this is what I was writing, is that education is a lifelong journey. I believe that it's sad that so many people are just like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to learn anything. No new friends, nothing new. And, like sometimes it's like, and we talk about white privilege, but like I almost feel privileged that I've been able to do the things that I've done in addition to having that white privilege. But then I'm also like, wait, I've also worked hard for a lot of this stuff. And, I think it's sad because I think a lot of these things you can draw them right back into education. Okay. I'm not 100% sure where y'all grew up, like in terms of like education and civics and stuff like that. But I was kind of shocked to hear that they teach political parties and you have Republican and Democrat, right? Well, when I was younger, they also referred to those ideologies as conservative and
liberal.
I was always taught progressive.
Oh.
Not me.
I never heard progressive until I got to be older.
Mm-hmm.
It's always liberal, and conservative.
Do you know what the term liberal means?
In general, yes.
It means a lot. Plentiful, liberal. And in fact, and this might be a Mandela effect. I don't know if you know about that stuff, but I could have sworn that on shampoos and stuff it said lather liberally. Did I make that up?
I didn't read my shampoo bottles. I know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know which ones.
I'm disappearing.
The aliens are
You're backlit.
Yep, I can't control the sun.
Oh, no.
There's literally nothing I can do. We'll just have to make do and make freak people
Tiffany's fading off into Ourstory. You kind of look like, I don't know, it looks... You look like Susan B. Anthony right now.
She's the ghost of Ourstory past.
That'd be fun.
I think that it gets to a certain point with this, as somebody who is taught civics, as somebody who like I said, just educated and like learned a lot of random things, and there's a lot of things I don't know, and it's just like you said. How the heck do we get to this point? How do people rationalize this? And I think that's where like we really have to be aware of the like algorithms and like what we're being shown versus what other people are being shown. And I think my closing thought would be, whatever you focus on expands. And I want to try to continue to find those things that we can focus on to hope. I'm going to leave it at that. Focusing on the hope. That's what I'm going to try to leave it on.
I like that, and we're going to have to continue the conversation. It's so odd that in the last, 30, I'll go with a full minute, I was like in sort of ghost mode, and now suddenly I'm okay. I'm back, folks. I had I guess, what did they call that, an NDE? And I didn't even know it. Well, anyway, I thought it was funny, so it was funny. So,
yeah, no, that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna go viral for that just alone. Just doing that, just that, and the TikTok clip of like, had this really weird thing happen today. Must have been ghosts.
Our story. So I think the main takeaway, I'm going to wrap this segment up, and we'll continue this conversation. So stay tuned, folks. But what we're learning from the Ourstory, I think, and from the current headlines is the story isn't done, right? That democracy isn't done unless we allow democracy to be done, right? And so, and I will say this, and for everybody who knows, the P word is coming, which is power doesn't rest, but Tammy. But neither should Purpose.
People?
What the heck were you
Oh.
thinking? What were you thinking?
I was nervous.
I know you were. I saw it. I saw it in the face.
I will say the P section of the dictionary is rather large. My dictionary is sitting right here.
Charles, are you trying to get us all in trouble right now? You know, do you understand the words that are coming out of your mouth right now?
Yes. Webster's.
Do you know that you realize that you are speaking to in the presence of the innuendo queen?
Yeah, he does.
Innuendo?
He knows. He knows what he's doing. He's being very strategic with his language right now.
Oh.
So is the dog. Singing the song of its people. All right, so there are 1282, 1471. What's 1471 minus 1282? Almost 200 pages of P words. Front, back. Probably about 50 to 60 on each page.
So anyway, remember, the main takeaway is power doesn't rest and neither should purpose. And at the root of all these headlines, we have to evaluate what is our purpose. So when we're speaking of like U.S. history and U.S. politics, U.S. business, what is the root? What is the purpose? That is what we need to consider. That is what we need to evaluate, and that is what we need to define. Or will be defined for us. But thank you, everybody. And until next time, apetiwutu.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.
All right, let's turn conversation into construction. Here's what you can do moving forward. 1, stay engaged. Local elections matter as much as national ones. Keep showing up. 2, hold power accountable. Call your representatives. Demand clarity. Silence is a permission slip. 3, support purpose-driven initiatives, whether it's education, food access, or civic transparency. Fund what feeds people. 4, protect joy. Laughter, music, and creativity are survival strategies. Keep them alive. 5, align your energy. Join communities like Empower People, where action is organized, not improvised. The election may be over, but democracy isn't done. Power doesn't rest, and neither should purpose. Don't wait for permission to participate. You already have the mic. Today, we looked at wins, worries, and what's next. From ballots to shutdowns to TikToks. It's all the same story. The people are paying attention again. Charles reminded us through our story that change has always been messy but meaningful. We saw headlines reveal where our systems are misaligned and how joy still sneaks in to remind us we're human. Here's your charge. Don't scroll past your power. Use your voice, use your energy, because we are the story in motion. I'm Tiffany Joy, and this has been Evolve Together with Empower People. We'll see you next week. Same clarity, same conviction, same purpose. Stay awake, stay aligned, stay powerful. Empower people, where people are power. Let's evolve together. Join at www.empowerpeople.org/join-now.